A black orphan girl kicked out by her stepmother saved a billionaire from drowning and changed her life forever. Daniel Harris didn't see the boom swing across the yacht's deck. One moment he was laughing, champagne flute in hand, the Miami sunset painting the ocean gold. The next moment, metal connected with his skull, and he was airborne. The Atlantic Ocean swallowed him whole. Cold. Dark. His head throbbed. Which way was up? His dress, shoes dragged him down. His tailored suit became a straitjacket. He couldn't breathe. Strong hands grabbed his collar, yanked him upward with impossible force. Brianna Taylor had been half asleep on the public beach 300 yards away when she'd heard the screaming. She'd learned to sleep light, survival skill when you're homeless at 17. The sound of panicked voices from the yacht party cut through the evening air. She'd seen him fall, seen the wealthy guests pointing but not jumping. You see someone drowning, you don't think. You swim. Her dead father's voice echoed in her head. So she'd run. Now she kicked hard, one arm locked around the drowning man's chest. Her father had been a swimming coach, champion swimmer, had taught her everything. She broke the surface, gasping, and swam for the beach. Her feet touched sand. She dragged him onto shore, flipped him on his back. Blue lips. Not breathing. 30 compressions, 2 breaths. Her hands found the center of his chest. Come on. Don't you die on me. People were running down the beach now. Someone screaming for an ambulance. She tilted his head back and breathed into his mouth. Once. Twice. Nothing. More compressions. 2 breaths. The man convulsed. Water erupted from his mouth. He rolled to his side, coughing, sucking in air. Brianna sat back, chest heaving. Her entire body shook. The man blinked up at her. Late 40s, salt and pepper hair plastered to his skull, blood from a gash on his temple. You saved me. The yacht guests swarmed them. A woman in an evening gown dropped beside him. Daniel. Oh my God. Brianna stood, backing away. Her wet clothes, faded Miami Dolphins t-shirt, cut-off shorts, clung to her skin. She looked exactly like what she was, a homeless kid sleeping rough on a public beach. The man, Daniel, tried to sit up. Wait. What's your name? Brianna. Then she turned and walked away. Wait. I need to thank you. But Brianna was already disappearing into the darkness. Behind her, sirens wailed. Somewhere in Miami, in the house that should have been hers, Victoria Taylor was probably drinking wine paid for with Brianna's dead father's money. Brianna had just saved a billionaire's life. But she couldn't save her own. Tell us where you are watching us from. Kindly subscribe and turn on your notifications. The hospital discharge papers sat on Daniel Harris's mahogany desk, stamped with Mercy General's logo and a diagnosis that made him feel old. Concussion, minor head trauma, near-drowning incident. 72 hours had passed since the yacht accident. 3 days since a homeless teenager had saved his life. And he couldn't stop thinking about her. Daniel, you need to focus. Patricia Lopez stood on the other side of his desk, arms crossed. His COO for 15 years, Patricia had the only voice in the company that could cut through his detachment. The Coral Gables deal closes in 4 days. If we don't find her. Patricia stopped mid-sentence. What? The girl from the beach. Brianna. Find her. Daniel leaned back in his leather chair, his office on the 42nd floor of the Harris Hotel Group headquarters offering a panoramic view of Miami's skyline. I want to thank her properly. Offer a reward. Daniel, we tried. Security reviewed footage from nearby businesses. She vanished. No address, no contact information. The police said. Then hire someone better than the police. Daniel's tone carried the authority of a man who'd built a hotel empire from a single beachfront property his father had lost in a card game. A property Daniel had won back at 23, leveraging everything he owned. I don't care what it costs. Patricia studied him with an expression that made Daniel uncomfortable. She'd worked with him through his wife Rachel's death 5 years ago. Through the aftermath when he'd buried his grief in expansion deals and 16-hour workdays. Through the dissolution of his relationship with his daughter. He stopped that thought before it went further. This isn't about gratitude, is it? Patricia said quietly. She saved my life. And you want to save hers. Patricia pulled out her tablet. I'll make some calls. But Daniel, if this girl is homeless, there's a reason. Maybe she doesn't want to be found. Everyone wants to be helped. No, everyone wants to be seen. There's a difference. Patricia headed for the door, then paused. When was the last time you called Emily? Daniel's jaw tightened. His daughter, 23 now, living in Seattle. They hadn't spoken in 8 months. Not since the argument about his obsession with work and his inability to be present for anything that matters. That's different, he said. Is it? Patricia left before he could answer. Daniel turned to the window, looking out at the city he'd conquered. 32 hotels across Florida, the Caribbean, and expanding into Texas. Net worth estimated at $2.3 billion according to the latest Forbes article. A corner office that overlooked everything he'd built. And it all felt empty. His phone buzzed. A text from his assistant. Channel 7 running story on your rescue. They're calling the girl Miami's mystery hero. Daniel pulled up the news segment on his computer. Grainy security footage from a beachfront restaurant showed Brianna dragging him from the water, performing CPR. The reporter's voiceover praised her courage while speculating about her identity. Sources say the young woman appeared to be experiencing homelessness, the reporter said. Police are asking for the public's help in locating her, so she can be properly recognized for her heroic actions. The footage froze on Brianna's face. Young, exhausted, looking at Daniel with an expression Daniel couldn't quite read. Not pride, not satisfaction, something closer to resignation. Like she'd done this before. Saved someone who couldn't save themselves. Daniel made a decision. He picked up his phone and called his head of security directly. Michael, I want you to check every homeless shelter, every beach between South Beach and Key Biscayne. Talk to social workers, outreach programs, anyone who works with homeless youth. I want to find Brianna Taylor. Sir, Michael hesitated. That's a lot of ground to cover. She might not even be using her real name. She told me her name before she left. Brianna. She meant it. Daniel didn't know how he knew that, but he did. Find her. And when you do, tell her I just want to talk. No police. No publicity. Just a conversation. After he hung up, Daniel opened his bottom desk drawer and pulled out a photograph he kept hidden there. Rachel and Emily, 10 years ago, on a beach in the Keys. Both of them laughing at something Daniel had said behind the camera. Back when his daughter still looked at him like he could fix anything. Back before he'd missed her high school graduation for a business trip. Before he'd forgotten her 21st birthday because of merger negotiations. Before she'd told him, voice breaking, "You're not my father anymore. You're just a man who writes checks." Daniel put the photo away and closed the drawer. He couldn't fix things with Emily. That bridge was burned. But maybe he could help the girl who'd saved him. Maybe that would be enough. Brianna woke to the sound of seagulls screaming and the smell of salt and rotting seaweed. She was behind the public restroom at Hollover Beach, her usual spot, curled up on a flattened cardboard box with her backpack as a pillow. The sun was already brutal. Miami in June didn't believe in gentle mornings. She checked her phone. 7:14 a.m. Battery at 12%. No service. She'd run out of prepaid minutes 3 days ago. 3 days since she'd pulled a drowning billionaire from the ocean and become Miami's mystery hero. She'd seen the news coverage on a TV through a restaurant window. Her face plastered across every channel. Do you know this girl? Police want to thank her. Brianna had left that beach immediately, moved to a different spot. The last thing she needed was cameras and questions and authorities getting involved. Authorities meant social services. Social services meant Victoria finding her. Victoria finding her meant. She didn't let herself finish that thought. Her stomach growled. She'd eaten yesterday, half a sandwich from a trash can behind a Subway, still wrapped, barely touched. Today she had nothing. Brianna stood, stretched, felt every muscle protest. Sleeping on concrete did that. She was 17, but some days she felt 40. She walked to the public shower by the beach. They turned on at 7, and rinsed the sand and sweat from her skin with her clothes still on. No soap. Soap cost money. A woman with 2 kids gave her a wide berth, pulling her children closer. Brianna knew that look. Homeless. Dangerous. Keep away. She didn't blame them. She probably looked dangerous. 5 feet 8 inches, athletic build from years of swimming. Natural hair and locks that she maintained as best she could without proper products. Skin dark enough that she'd heard every slur imaginable from Victoria over the years. Her father used to say she was beautiful like her mother. Brianna barely remembered her mother. She died when Brianna was 4, but she remembered her father saying it. You have your mama's strength, Bri. Her grace. Her fire. Marcus Taylor. Champion swimmer. Coach. The man who'd taught her that water was freedom, that swimming was meditation, that you could always find peace if you just dove deep enough. He died 2 years ago. Stroke at 47. Brianna had found him collapsed by the pool at the community center where he coached. She'd called 911, performed CPR just like he'd taught her, but it hadn't been enough. The doctors said he'd had an undiagnosed heart condition, that there was nothing anyone could have done. Brianna had never believed that. After the funeral, Victoria had waited exactly 1 week before dropping the bomb. Your father left everything to me. The house, the money, all of it. And I'm not raising someone else's child. I'm his daughter, Brianna had said, shocked. You're 17, almost an adult. And frankly, I've put up with you long enough. Victoria's voice had been ice. I want you out by Friday. This is my house. My father. Your father married me. Legal spouse. Everything goes to the spouse. Victoria had smiled then, a cruel twist of lips. I already spoke to a lawyer. You have no claim. So pack your things and leave, or I'll have the police remove you. Brianna had gone to her father's lawyer, a man named Gerald Thompson who'd handled Marcus's estate. But Gerald had confirmed it. Victoria was telling the truth. Marcus had never updated his will after marrying her 3 years ago. Everything went to the spouse. But there must be something, Brianna had begged. College fund, savings, something my dad set aside for me. Gerald had looked genuinely pained. Your father did have accounts earmarked for your education. But legally, they're part of the estate. Victoria has access to everything. So she gets it all? The house he bought before he even met her? His medals? Brianna's voice had broken. His life insurance? I'm sorry, Brianna. The law is clear. So Victoria had taken everything. The house in Coral Gables where Brianna had grown up. Her father's championship swimming medals from his college days. The car. The bank accounts. Even Brianna's own laptop and the savings bonds her father had bought her every birthday. Brianna had left with one backpack, $200 in cash her father had given her for emergencies, and the clothes on her back. That was 3 months ago. The $200 lasted 3 weeks. Then came the reality of being homeless at 17. Too old for most youth shelters. Too young to rent an apartment without a cosigner. No job because no address. No address because no job. The perfect trap. She'd tried sleeping at the community center where her father coached, but the new management kicked her out after 2 nights. She tried a homeless shelter in Liberty City, but it was full. Always full. A church let her sleep in their parking lot for a week before neighbors complained. Eventually, she'd found the beaches. Public, open all night, with showers and restrooms. In Miami, you could survive outside year-round if you were smart. If you were invisible. Brianna had gotten very good at being invisible. Now, standing in the public shower fully dressed, she caught her reflection in the metal mirror bolted to the wall. 17 years old. Should be starting her senior year of high school in 2 months. Should be applying to colleges, going to prom, worrying about normal things. Instead, she was rationing bottled water and trying to figure out where her next meal would come from. Her phone buzzed, low battery warning. 5%. Brianna turned it off to save what little power remained. The phone was her lifeline. The only way to call 911 if something happened. The only connection to the world that had forgotten her. She thought about the man she'd saved. Daniel Harris. She'd looked him up on her phone before the battery died, using free Wi-Fi from a McDonald's. Real estate billionaire. Harris Hotel Group. 32 properties. Personal net worth that made Brianna's stomach hurt to read. He probably owned the beach she slept on. And he wanted to thank her. Offer a reward. Brianna had seen the news coverage encouraging her to come forward. Seen his security team asking around, showing her photo to homeless outreach workers. But she couldn't come forward. Couldn't risk Victoria finding out where she was. Victoria who'd already taken everything. Victoria who'd made it clear that Brianna was an inconvenience she'd tolerated only because Marcus insisted. Your father felt sorry for you. Victoria had said that last day. But I don't. You're not special. You're not owed anything. And I'm finally free of you. Brianna left the shower and headed down the beach. She needed to move. Staying in one place too long invited questions. The news coverage had made her recognizable. Already, 2 people had stopped her yesterday, asking if she was that girl from TV. She'd said no and kept walking. Now she walked south, away from Hallover, toward a different beach. Her legs moved automatically. Swimming muscles, her father used to say. Swimmers have the strongest legs. Remember that, Bri. Your power comes from your foundation. She wished he were here. Wished she could ask him why he'd left everything to Victoria. Wished she could tell him she'd saved someone's life, just like he'd taught her. Wished he could save her like she'd saved that drowning man. But the dead couldn't save anyone. And Brianna was running out of time to save herself. Michael Phillips, head of security for Harris Hotel Group, had located 37 homeless individuals named Brianna in the greater Miami area over the past 3 days. None of them were the girl from the beach. She's either using a fake name or she's avoiding shelters entirely, Michael told Daniel over the phone. If she's living rough, sleeping on beaches, in parks, she could be anywhere. Keep looking, Daniel said. He was in his penthouse apartment in South Beach, unable to sleep despite the late hour. Check the beaches again. She was sleeping at Hollover when I found her, or when she found me. Sir, I've had teams at Hollover for 3 days. She's not there. Then she moved. Check every public beach from Miami Beach to Homestead. She's a swimmer. She'll stay near water. Michael sighed. That's over 40 miles of coastline. Then hire more people. Daniel stood at his floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out at the dark ocean. I'm not giving up on this. After he hung up, Daniel poured himself 2 fingers of scotch. 30-year-old Macallan, a bottle worth more than most people made in a month. It tasted like regret. His phone rang. Emily. His daughter was calling him at 11:47 p.m. Daniel's hand hesitated over the phone. Then he answered. Emily. Dad. Her voice was careful, distant. I saw the news. About the drowning. Are you okay? I'm fine. The girl, she saved me. I heard. A pause. Are you really spending company resources trying to track down a homeless teenager? She saved my life. And you want to throw money at her to make yourself feel better. Emily's voice carried an edge Daniel recognized. Disappointment dressed as anger. That's very you, Dad. That's not fair. Isn't it? You couldn't save Mom. You can't fix things with me. So now you're going to save some random girl and tell yourself you're a good person. Daniel's grip tightened on his glass. Your mother died of cancer, Emily. There was nothing I could. You could have been there. You could have taken time off work. You could have prioritized us over the Cancun expansion deal. Emily's voice cracked. But you didn't. You worked through her hospice care. You took calls during her last week. You were answering emails when she died. I was providing for this family. We didn't need more money, Dad. We needed you. Emily took a shaky breath. And now you're doing it again. Obsessing over this girl because it's easier than dealing with the actual relationships in your life. I just want to help her. No. You want to fix something you think you can fix. Because everything else is broken and you don't know how to deal with that. A long pause. I have to go. I hope you find her. I hope it makes you feel better. But Dad, what? Saving someone's life doesn't make up for abandoning the people who loved you. She hung up. Daniel stood in the darkness of his apartment, Emily's words echoing. He finished his scotch in one burning swallow. She was wrong. This wasn't about him. This was about a girl who'd risked her life for a stranger. A girl who'd disappeared back into the shadows because she had nowhere else to go. He could help her. Give her a fresh start. Opportunities she'd never have otherwise. That wasn't selfish, was it? Brianna found Daniel Harris 4 days after she'd saved him. Or rather, he found her. She was at a different beach, Matheson Hammock, south of Coral Gables, washing her shirt in the public fountain when a black SUV pulled into the parking lot. Brianna's instincts screamed before the vehicle even stopped. Too clean. Too expensive. Wrong place, wrong time. The driver's door opened. A man in a suit stepped out. American, 40-something, security earpiece visible. Michael Phillips. She'd seen his photo online when she'd researched Daniel Harris. Brianna grabbed her backpack and ran. Wait. Michael called. Brianna, please. Mr. Harris just wants to talk. But Brianna was already across the parking lot, heading for the tree line. She'd gotten good at running. 3 months on the streets taught you when to fight and when to flee. She heard footsteps behind her. Not Michael, someone faster. A hand caught her backpack strap. Brianna spun, fist already swinging. Daniel Harris caught her wrist. Please. I'm not going to hurt you. Brianna yanked free, breathing hard. Daniel stood 3 feet away, hands raised in surrender. He wore casual clothes today, jeans, a polo shirt, but everything still screamed money. Even his watch probably cost more than her father's house. How did you find me? Brianna demanded. Security cameras. Facial recognition. I've had people looking for you for 4 days. Daniel lowered his hand slowly. I just want to thank you. To help you. I don't need your help. You're living on the streets at 17 years old. I need you to leave me alone. Brianna's voice shook with anger. I didn't save your life so you could track me down like a criminal. I'm not treating you like a criminal. I'm trying to. What? Rescue me. Brianna laughed bitterly. I saved you, not the other way around. I don't need some rich guy showing up to make himself feel better about being helpless. Daniel flinched. The words had hit their mark. That's not. He stopped. Started again. You're right. I was helpless. You saved me. And I'm grateful. Let me show you how grateful. With money. With whatever you need. Housing. Job placement. Education. I own hotels. I can find you work. I can. You can leave me alone. Brianna stepped back. I don't want your charity. I don't want to be your good deed. I want. She stopped, not sure how to finish that sentence. What did she want? Her father back. Her house back. Her life back. None of which Daniel Harris could provide. What do you want? Daniel asked quietly. Tell me, please. Brianna met his eyes. Really looked at him for the first time since the beach. He looked tired. Older than 48. Like someone carrying weight he couldn't put down. Like her. I want people to stop taking things from me, she said finally. My father died 2 years ago. His wife, my stepmother, kicked me out and took everything he left behind. Everything. His house. His money. Even his swimming medals. Her voice cracked. I just want something that's mine. Something no one can take away. Daniel's expression shifted. Understanding, maybe. Or recognition. Your stepmother, he said. Victoria Taylor. I looked into your background. The property records show she inherited your father's estate. Brianna's blood went cold. You investigated me? I needed to understand why you were homeless. Why you wouldn't come forward. Daniel's voice was gentle. I know what she did to you, Brianna. And I can help. You can't. I already talked to a lawyer. She's his legal spouse. Everything goes to her. Maybe. But there are other ways to challenge an estate distribution. Especially if we can prove she acted in bad faith. Kicked out a minor child with no support. That's abandonment. Possibly elder abuse statutes if we can show she manipulated your father. My father wasn't elderly. He was 47. But he was vulnerable after your mother died. Victoria married him quickly. Some might say suspiciously quickly. Daniel pulled out his phone. I can have my lawyers look into this. Pro bono. No strings attached. Brianna wanted to believe him. God, she wanted to believe him so badly it hurt. But she'd learned not to trust adults who promised help. Why? She asked. Why do you care? You don't know me. Because you saved my life. Because you're 17 and sleeping on beaches and you deserve better. Daniel's voice was raw. Because I have a daughter your age who won't speak to me, and I can't help her. But maybe I can help you. There it was. The truth. Brianna saw it in his eyes. The guilt. The need to fix something. Anything. This wasn't about her. It was about him trying to patch the holes in his own life with someone else's problems. She should walk away. Should tell him to take his guilt and his money and his lawyers and leave her alone. But then she thought about Victoria. Sitting in her father's house. Wearing her father's ring. Spending his life insurance money on wine and furniture, and probably laughing about how easy it had been to get rid of the inconvenient stepdaughter. Brianna thought about her father's medals, 3 state championships, 1 national qualifier, sitting in a box somewhere, forgotten. She thought about the injustice of it all. And she made a choice. Okay, she said. I'll let you help. But not charity. If you want to pay me back for saving your life, then help me get back what's mine. My father's medals. Maybe some of the money he saved for my college. That's it. Done. Daniel said immediately. And I don't want to live in one of your hotels or work some pity job. If I work, I earn it. If I stay somewhere, I pay rent. Okay. And if Victoria finds out where I am, if she tries anything, you stay out of it. This is between me and her. Daniel hesitated. Brianna, if she's dangerous. She's not dangerous. She's just mean. Brianna adjusted her backpack. Do we have a deal or not? Daniel extended his hand. We have a deal. Brianna looked at his hand for a long moment. This was a mistake. She knew it was a mistake. Rich people didn't help without wanting something back. And she'd already learned that trusting people led to losing everything. But her father had taught her to swim toward drowning people, not away from them. Maybe the same rule applied to drowning yourself. She shook his hand. Good, Daniel said. First things first, you need a safe place to stay. I have a property manager who handles corporate housing. Small apartments we use for visiting executives. I can get you into one tonight. No cost until you're working. I said no charity. It's not charity. It's deferred payment. Once you're working, you can pay me back if you want. Daniel pulled out his phone. But tonight, you need to sleep in a bed, not on a beach. Brianna wanted to argue, but she was so tired, so hungry, and the idea of a bed, a real bed, made her eyes burn with tears she refused to shed. Fine, she said, but just until I figure things out. Just until you figure things out, Daniel agreed. What Brianna didn't know was that Daniel had already instructed his lawyers to open an investigation into Victoria Taylor's finances. What Daniel didn't know was that Brianna had a plan of her own, one that didn't involve lawyers or courts or playing by rules that had never protected her anyway. And what neither of them knew was that Victoria Taylor had seen the news coverage of Miami's mystery hero, had recognized Brianna's face despite the grainy footage, and was already making plans to eliminate the only threat to her comfortable new life. Because Victoria hadn't spent 2 years stealing a dead man's estate just to let his daughter take it back. And she'd proven once already that she was willing to do whatever it took to keep what she'd stolen. The corporate apartment was on the 14th floor of a building in Brickell, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Biscayne Bay. Brianna stood in the doorway, backpack hanging from one shoulder, unable to move. It's just temporary, Daniel said behind her, until you figure out what you want to do. The apartment had hardwood floors, a full kitchen with stainless steel appliances, a bedroom with an actual bed, queen size, white linens that looked untouched, a bathroom with a shower that had multiple heads and controls Brianna didn't understand. It was bigger than her childhood bedroom had been. I can't afford this, Brianna said. You're not paying for it. Not yet. Daniel set a bag of groceries on the kitchen counter. He'd insisted on stopping at Publix on the way here. Consider it employee housing. Once you start working, we'll figure out a reasonable rent. I don't have a job. Not yet. But you will. Daniel opened the fridge, which hummed expensively. I spoke to the manager at our Coconut Grove property. They need lifeguards for the pool. You're certified, right? Brianna blinked. How did you? Your father's records. Marcus Taylor coached at Gulliver Prep's community center. His personnel file listed you as his assistant instructor. You were certified at 15. The casual mention of her father's name hit Brianna like a fist. You really did investigate me. I needed to understand your situation. Daniel started putting groceries away, milk, bread, eggs, fruit, things Brianna hadn't eaten in months. The lifeguard position pays $18 an hour, 25 hours a week. That's about $2,000 a month before taxes. Enough to cover rent here and have money left over. Brianna did the math quickly. The apartment had to cost at least $1,500 a month. Maybe more. You're charging me less than it's worth. I'm charging you what you can afford. Daniel closed the fridge. That's how it works when you're helping someone. That's charity. No, charity is free. This has strings. You work, you pay rent, you show up on time. Daniel pulled a key from his pocket and set it on the counter. This is investment. I'm investing in someone who saved my life, who showed more courage in 5 minutes than I've shown in 5 years. Brianna picked up the key. It was heavier than she expected. Why do you keep saying things like that? Like what? Like you're some coward. You built a hotel empire. You're on Forbes lists. You're successful, rich, respected. Daniel's voice was flat and completely disconnected from anything that matters. My daughter won't talk to me. I work through my wife's death. I measure my life in properties acquired and deals closed. He met Brianna's eyes. You dove into the ocean to save a stranger. I wouldn't have done that. I would have called 911 and waited for someone else to handle it. You don't know that. Yes, I do. Daniel headed for the door. There's a phone charger by the bed. Wi-Fi password is on the fridge. I'll text you details about the lifeguard interview tomorrow. Wait. Brianna's voice stopped him. Why are you really doing this? Daniel turned, his expression unreadable. Because when you pulled me out of that water, I realized I'd been drowning for 5 years. And nobody had tried to save me. Not my daughter. Not my friends. Nobody. His voice was quiet. Maybe I'm hoping if I save you, I can figure out how to save myself. He left before Brianna could respond. She stood alone in the apartment, key in hand, looking at the view of Miami's skyline. Somewhere out there, Victoria was in her father's house, sleeping in his bed, living the life he'd built. And here was Brianna, in a stranger's apartment, accepting help from a billionaire with a savior complex. Her father's voice echoed in her head. Sometimes you have to accept the current to get where you're going, Bri. Fighting the ocean just exhausts you. Brianna walked to the bedroom. The bed had 4 pillows. 4. She sat on the edge, testing it. Soft. Clean. Safe. Then she lay back and stared at the ceiling, waiting for the guilt to hit. The feeling that she didn't deserve this. That she should be grateful, but instead felt angry. Angry that it took a rich man's guilt to get her off the streets. Angry that the system had failed her, but would bend over backward for Daniel Harris. Angry that saving someone's life was the only thing that had made her visible. But exhaustion won over anger. Brianna pulled the comforter over herself, still dressed, shoes still on, backpack within reach, and fell into the first real sleep she'd had in 3 months. In her dreams, her father was teaching her to swim. But when she looked up, the man standing at the edge of the pool wasn't her father. It was Daniel Harris, and she was drowning. Victoria Taylor sat in her Coral Gables living room, Marcus's living room, really, though she'd redecorated extensively in the 2 years since his death, watching the evening news with a glass of Pinot Grigio. The house was perfect. 4 bedrooms, 3 baths, a pool in the backyard where Marcus used to coach his private students. Victoria had turned the pool into a decorative feature. No more screaming children, no more chlorine smell. Just clean water and expensive landscaping. The life insurance payout had been substantial, $200,000. Combined with Marcus's savings and the house equity, Victoria was sitting on nearly $500,000 in assets. All hers. Legally, completely hers. She'd earned it, really. 3 years married to a man who'd been obsessed with his dead wife and his ungrateful daughter. 3 years of playing stepmother to a girl who'd looked at Victoria like she was an intruder. 3 years of listening to Marcus talk about when Brianna goes to college and Brianna's swimming career and making sure Brianna is taken care of. Well, Brianna could take care of herself now. Victoria took a sip of wine and nearly choked when the news anchor said, "Our top story tonight. Miami's mystery hero has been identified." The screen showed grainy footage Victoria recognized immediately. Brianna, older, thinner, but unmistakably her stepdaughter, pulling a man from the ocean, performing CPR on a beach. 17-year-old Brianna Taylor saved billionaire hotel developer Daniel Harris from drowning last week, the anchor continued. Sources say Taylor has been experiencing homelessness since her father's death 2 years ago. The community is rallying to help the young hero who asked for nothing in return. Victoria's hand tightened on her wine glass. So tight the stem nearly cracked. The broadcast cut to an interview with Daniel Harris himself. He stood outside one of his hotels, looking earnest and grateful. "Brianna showed incredible courage," Daniel said. "I'm working with my team to make sure she gets the support she deserves. She's a remarkable young woman who's overcome tremendous challenges." "Mr. Harris," the reporter asked, "is it true you've offered Brianna employment and housing?" "I don't want to discuss specifics out of respect for her privacy. But yes, I'm helping her get back on her feet." Victoria's mind raced. Brianna was alive. Not just alive, being helped by a billionaire. Being put on television as some kind of hero. Getting sympathy and attention and probably money. And if Brianna had access to resources, real resources, she might start asking questions about the estate. Might hire a lawyer. Might challenge Victoria's inheritance. Victoria grabbed her phone and Googled Daniel Harris. Real estate mogul. Net worth $2.3 billion. Owner of Harris Hotel Group. Philanthropist. Divorced. Estranged from only daughter. Then she Googled challenging a will in Florida. The results made her stomach drop. If a minor child was excluded from a will or inadequately provided for, they may have grounds to contest. Brianna had been 17 when Victoria kicked her out. Still a minor. If a surviving spouse fails to provide for a dependent child, the court may. Victoria drained her wine glass and poured another. Her hands shook as she refilled it. She needed to act. Needed to control this situation before it spiraled. Before Brianna got lawyers involved. Before everything Victoria had built came crashing down. She pulled up the Harris Hotel Group website and found the corporate office number. After navigating an automated system that seemed deliberately designed to waste her time, she finally reached a human. "Harris Hotel Group, how may I direct your call?" "I need to speak with someone in Mr. Harris's office. It's regarding Brianna Taylor." Victoria kept her voice steady, professional. "It's urgent." A pause. "May I ask who's calling?" This is Victoria Taylor, Brianna's legal guardian. Another pause, longer this time. Please hold. Victoria waited, her pulse accelerating. She needed to plant seeds of doubt. Make them question Brianna's story. Protect what she'd worked for. Protect the inheritance she'd earned through years of playing the dutiful wife to a grieving, lonely man. A woman's voice came on the line. This is Patricia Lopez, Mr. Harris's chief operating officer. You're Brianna's stepmother. Her legal guardian, yes. I've been trying to locate her for months. Victoria let concern drip into her voice. I saw the news coverage. Thank God she's safe. I've been so worried. Miss Taylor, according to our information, you removed Brianna from your home 3 months ago. Victoria's grip tightened on the phone. That's not accurate. Brianna ran away. She's been struggling since her father died, acting out, refusing therapy, getting into trouble at school. I tried everything to help her, but she wouldn't accept it. When she disappeared, I filed a report with the police. We'll verify that. Please do. You'll find I've been desperately searching for her. Victoria softened her voice, injected just the right amount of maternal concern. Look, I know Brianna's been through trauma. Losing her father was devastating for both of us. But she needs professional help, not just a job and an apartment. She's a troubled teenager, Ms. Lopez. I'm afraid Mr. Harris doesn't understand what he's getting involved with. And what would that be? Brianna has issues with authority, with trust. She's run away before, twice in the year before Marcus died. She's told lies to get attention, exaggerated situations. I'm not saying she's a bad kid. I'm saying she's hurt and confused, and she might not be telling Mr. Harris the whole truth. Patricia's voice was cool. What truth would that be? That I didn't kick her out. That I didn't steal her inheritance. There was no inheritance, Ms. Lopez. Marcus died with debt from medical bills. The house has a mortgage. I'm barely keeping up with payments. Victoria let her voice crack slightly. She'd practiced this in the mirror. I love my husband, and I love his daughter, but I can't help someone who won't be helped. There was a long pause on the other end. Victoria held her breath. I see, Patricia finally said. All I'm asking is that Mr. Harris be careful. Brianna needs therapy, not charity. She needs structure, not freedom. And she needs to come home where she belongs. I'll pass your concerns along to Mr. Harris. Thank you. And please, tell Brianna I love her. That her room is waiting. That we can work through this as a family. Victoria hung up and immediately refilled her wine glass. Her hands were still shaking, but now from adrenaline instead of panic. It was a start. She'd planted doubt, made herself look like the concerned guardian. Now she just needed to wait and see if it took root. But waiting felt dangerous. Brianna was with Daniel Harris now, and Daniel Harris had resources. Money, lawyers, the kind of influence that could unravel Victoria's carefully constructed life. Victoria walked to the pool and stared at her reflection in the still water. She thought about Marcus, floating face down in the community center pool. The way the paramedics had looked at her when she'd called 911, screaming that her husband had collapsed. The way no one had questioned the sudden stroke. The way his doctor had seemed surprised at the autopsy results. Victoria had been careful, so careful. And now Brianna, ungrateful, resilient, impossible Brianna, was back. And she had a billionaire's ear. Victoria pulled out her laptop and opened a file she'd created 2 years ago. Insurance. Inside were photographs, bank records, the forged will she'd had created when Marcus was sick, before he could change it. Evidence of Brianna's behavioral problems, fabricated incident reports, exaggerated school issues, notes from fictitious therapists. Victoria had prepared for this possibility, had always known Brianna might come back someday. But she'd never imagined the girl would come back with a billionaire's backing. Victoria poured more wine and opened her contacts. She had a lawyer on retainer. A good one. The kind who asked questions but knew better than to ask them loudly. It was time to go on offense. Because if Daniel Harris thought he could take away what Victoria had earned, he was going to learn very quickly that she didn't give up anything without a fight. The hurricane warning came 2 days after Brianna moved into the apartment. Tropical Storm Helena had strengthened into a Category 2 hurricane overnight, and the forecast track put Miami directly in its path. The city issued mandatory evacuation orders for coastal areas. Schools closed. Businesses shuttered. News stations went into perpetual storm coverage mode. Brianna stood at her apartment window on the 14th floor, watching palm trees bend in the pre-storm wind. The bay below was turning dark gray, waves churning into chaos. She'd lived through hurricanes before, Florida kid, born and raised, but never from this height. Never with this perspective. Her phone rang. "Daniel, are you seeing the weather reports?" he asked without preamble. "Hard to miss. The building manager is evacuating all residents. They're opening shelters, but I have a better option. My house in Pinecrest is rated for Category 5. Hurricane-proof glass, generator backup, the works. You're welcome to ride out the storm there. I'll be fine at the shelter. Brianna, the public shelters are going to be packed. Families with small children, people with medical needs, elderly residents. You don't have to do that. I've been homeless for 3 months. I can handle a shelter." "I know you can." Daniel's voice softened. "But you don't have to anymore. That's the point." Brianna closed her eyes. She understood what he was saying. Independence meant turning down help, right? Meant not accepting things you couldn't pay back. Meant staying separate, self-sufficient, untouched. But pride was expensive when a hurricane was coming. Pride didn't keep you warm. Pride didn't provide shelter. "Fine," she said. "But I'm not staying in your house alone." "That's weird. I'll be there." Patricia too. She lives nearby, and her building isn't as secure. And before you argue, there are 5 bedrooms. You'll have privacy. You can lock your door. You'll be safe. 2 hours later, Brianna was in Daniel's black SUV, heading west toward Pinecrest as rain started hammering the windshield. The roads were already clogged with evacuation traffic. Gas stations had lines of cars stretching for blocks, people frantic to fill up before the pumps ran out of fuel. Supermarkets were chaos, families loading carts with water, canned food, batteries, candles. "This is insane," Brianna said, watching people physically fight over the last bottles of water at a convenience store they passed. An elderly woman was on the ground, another shopper standing over her with a water case. "This is Miami during hurricane season," Daniel said, his hands steady on the wheel. "Everyone panics. Then the storm shifts course, and we all feel silly. You think Helena's going to miss us? No. I think she's going to hit us directly, and we're going to lose power for 3 days. Maybe longer." Daniel glanced at her. "But we'll be safe. That's what matters." The drive took longer than usual, nearly 2 hours for what should have been 45 minutes. Daniel used the time to tell her about other storms he'd lived through. Hurricane Andrew when he was young, sleeping in his car with his father in a parking lot because they couldn't afford a hotel. The irony wasn't lost on either of them. By the time they reached Pinecrest, the wind was picking up dangerously. Trees already bent at dangerous angles. Power lines swaying. The sky had turned a sickly greenish-gray. Daniel's house in Pinecrest was less a house and more a compound. 8,000 square feet of modern architecture tucked behind gates and mature oak trees that swayed like they might uproot at any moment. Hurricane shutters were already down, giving the place a fortress-like appearance. Solar panels on the roof. A backup generator the size of a car. Patricia was waiting inside, setting up supplies in the kitchen, battery-powered lights, a radio, cases of water, first aid kits, non-perishable food. She'd been busy. "Brianna," Patricia said with a warm smile when she saw her. "Glad you decided to join us. I was just telling Daniel he's overprepared as usual." "Overprepared means we don't die," Daniel said dryly. "And we don't panic." Both valuable things in a hurricane. The next 6 hours were surreal in a way Brianna couldn't have anticipated. She'd expected awkwardness, tension, the discomfort of being the charity case sheltering with the billionaire and his employee. Instead, she found something closer to normal. Patricia had made pasta before the power went out. Fresh pasta, not from a jar, insisting that the power would die soon and they should use the stove while they could. The 3 of them ate together at Daniel's large dining table. Patricia told stories about Daniel's early days in the hotel business, when he'd personally cleaned rooms himself and worked the front desk during peak seasons. "He was impossible," Patricia said, gesturing with her fork for emphasis. "Absolutely impossible. He'd micromanage everything. Couldn't delegate. Nearly burned out twice before he turned 30. I learned," Daniel protested, but he was smiling. "You learned to hire people to micromanage for you," Patricia corrected. "It's not the same thing, but at least you learned something." They played board games while the wind picked up outside. Monopoly, which lasted nearly 3 hours because Daniel kept trying to negotiate ridiculous trades, and Patricia kept accepting them just to watch him realize he'd made terrible deals. Brianna found herself laughing. Actually laughing. Something she hadn't done since her father died. Patricia told more stories. About Daniel's first failed hotel deal. About the time he'd accidentally booked a conference in the wrong city and had to comp everyone's rooms as an apology. About the years of struggle before success finally came. You weren't always rich. Brianna asked at one point. God, no, Daniel said. I grew up in a trailer park in Homestead. My dad gambled away everything we had. Lost the house. Lost the car. Lost any sense of stability. I worked 3 jobs to put myself through community college. Took me 15 years to build the first hotel. But you made it. I made money. That's not the same as making it. Daniel looked at Patricia, then at Brianna. You want to know the truth? I've never felt successful. Not really. Because the things I wanted most, a happy family, a daughter who loved me, a life that actually meant something, those things can't be bought. My dad used to say money is like water, Brianna said quietly. Essential for survival, but you can drown in it if you're not careful. Daniel smiled sadly. Smart man. What else did he say? Brianna thought about it. He said swimming teaches you everything you need to know about life. That you can't fight the current forever. That sometimes you have to float to conserve energy. That panic kills more people than water does. Sounds like he was talking about more than swimming. He usually was. Brianna's voice softened. After my mom died, he used to take me to the pool late at night. We'd just float together in the dark, looking up at the stars. He'd tell me stories about her, how they met, how she laughed, how much she'd loved me. Those are my best memories. The living room fell quiet except for the sound of the wind outside. Thank you for sharing that, Daniel said finally. That's a beautiful memory. Around 9 p.m., Patricia decided to call it a night and head to one of the guest rooms upstairs. I'm going to try to sleep before the power goes out, she said. You two should probably do the same. The next few hours could be rough. Daniel and Brianna stayed up another hour, watching the news coverage on battery backup. Helena was now a Category 3, gaining strength, a clear track directly toward Miami. Wind speeds were increasing. Storm surge warnings were being issued. The reporters were starting to sound genuinely scared. This is really happening, Brianna said. This is really happening, Daniel confirmed. But we're as prepared as anyone can be. I've weathered worse. And you grew up here. You know how these storms work. My dad used to say hurricanes are like life. Loud, scary, unpredictable. But if you respect them and prepare, you can survive them. It's the ones you don't prepare for that destroy you. More wisdom from Marcus. Yeah, he was full of it. Brianna smiled despite herself. He probably would have liked you. You're both fixers. Both trying to save people. Did he save you? Every day, Brianna said. Until he couldn't anymore. They sat in silence, listening to the storm rage outside. Around midnight, the power went out. Suddenly, the house shifted from warm and comfortable to dark and isolating. The silence was strange without the hum of electricity. Daniel turned on battery-powered lanterns. They cast long shadows across the living room. Come on, he said. I want to show you something. He led Brianna to the library, a room she'd somehow missed despite the house tour earlier. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves. A fireplace, non-functional in a hurricane, but beautiful. And on one shelf, a photograph in a silver frame. A young girl, maybe 8 years old, laughing on a beach. Her hand was in a man's hand. Daniel, maybe 15 years younger. They were both soaked from ocean water, both genuinely happy. Emily, Daniel said quietly. My daughter. This is from when she was 8. Our last good memory before Rachel got sick. What happened? Rachel died. I buried myself in work. Emily needed me, and I wasn't there. By the time I realized what I'd lost, it was too late. She moved in with her mother's parents. Went to college. Cut me off completely. Daniel set the photo down. I've spent 5 years being completely self-sufficient. Not needing anyone. Not letting anyone close. And you know what it got me? An empty house, a daughter who won't speak to me, and a near-death experience in the Atlantic Ocean. And then I showed up. And then you showed up. Daniel's voice was raw. And I realized that maybe strength isn't about not needing people. Maybe it's about letting people help you. About accepting that we're all drowning sometimes. And that's okay. That asking for help isn't weakness, it's sanity. I'm not your daughter, Brianna said quietly. I know, but you need help. And I have the resources to provide it. And maybe, his voice broke. Maybe if I can save you, I can prove to myself that I'm not completely broken, that I can still do something right. The honesty was devastating. Brianna saw it clearly now. Daniel wasn't trying to save her as much as he was trying to save himself. But somehow, knowing that didn't make her want to reject his help. It made it more real, more human. Okay, she said softly. We can save each other. Deal. Daniel smiled, tears in his eyes. Deal. The power went out at 11:47 p.m., right as Helena's eyewall reached Miami-Dade County. The house shuddered violently. Wind screamed around the corners and through the eaves. Rain hammered against the hurricane-proof glass with a sound like machine gun fire. But inside, with battery lights glowing warm and the generator humming steadily, it felt safe. Contained. Protected. Patricia appeared in the doorway, wrapped in a blanket. Everyone okay? Fine, Brianna said. They sat together in the living room, listening to the storm rage outside. Patricia had brought her laptop, running on battery, so they could continue monitoring the news through the house's backup internet connection. Helena was making landfall now. Wind speeds were at 115 miles per hour. Storm surge warnings for up to 8 feet in some areas. Outside, Miami was being torn apart. Inside, surrounded by battery lights and new friends and the possibility of something better, Brianna felt something shift. Something crucial. For the first time since her father died, she wasn't alone. And more than that, she wasn't invisible. The hurricane passed during the night. Brianna woke to sunlight streaming through hurricane shutters, gaps in the metal slats that looked like prison bars. For a moment, she lay in the guest bed, soft, clean, temporary, and listened to the silence. No wind, no rain, no roar, just silence. She checked her phone. 7:14 a.m. 43 text messages and 12 missed calls. Most were from unknown numbers. News outlets, probably. She'd made the news again, this time as Miami's mystery hero shelters with Billionaire during Hurricane Helena. One message was from Patricia, coffee in the kitchen. Generator is running. News says we got lucky. Storm veered slightly. Flooding in some areas, but not catastrophic. Brianna dressed and found Daniel and Patricia already awake, watching the news coverage on a laptop powered by the generator. Miami looked devastated but survivable. Down power lines, flooded streets, damaged buildings, but no catastrophic damage. No mass casualties. Lucky, Patricia said, reading Brianna's expression. Though don't tell that to anyone in a flooded home. Daniel was already on his phone, calling his hotel managers. I don't care about the property damage. Check on our staff. Make sure everyone is accounted for. Open the lobbies as shelters for anyone who needs them. He paused, listening. I know it costs money. Do it anyway. Brianna felt something shift in her chest. She'd thought Daniel was just a rich guy playing hero. But watching him prioritize people over profit, that was different. Your lifeguard interview is in 2 days, Daniel said after hanging up. The Coconut Grove property didn't suffer much damage. The pool is still operational. Shouldn't we wait until things settle down? Why? You need a job. They need a lifeguard. Life doesn't stop for hurricanes. It just gets rearranged. Daniel stood. I'm going to check on the house. Patricia needs to get to her office and coordinate emergency response for the company. You should probably check on, well, wherever you were staying before. Brianna's chest tightened. The beach. Her cardboard box. The places she'd made home on the streets. I'll be fine, she said. I just need to. I know where your stuff is, Patricia said gently. I had my team collect it yesterday before we left. Your backpack, your belongings. They're in the guest room closet. We knew you might want to check that things were safe. Brianna felt her eyes burn. They'd thought of that. Had cared enough to preserve the few possessions she had. Thank you, she whispered. Victoria Taylor drove through flooded streets in her Range Rover, water splashing against the windows as she navigated toward Daniel Harris's Coconut Grove property. She'd gotten the address from a private investigator, $2,000 that stung but was worth every penny. The news said Brianna was staying with Daniel Harris, living in his hotel, being helped by his team. Victoria's fingers tightened on the steering wheel. She'd spent the hurricane alone in the Coral Gables house, watching the storm, drinking wine, planning. When the power went out, she'd sat in the darkness with her laptop running on battery, researching, pulling together documents, preparing her evidence. Brianna was 17, a minor. Victoria was her legal guardian. And regardless of whatever lies Brianna had told Daniel Harris, the law was on Victoria's side. The Coconut Grove property was impressive, a boutique hotel right on the bay, gardens that had taken a beating from the storm but would recover. Daniel's people had already set up operations in the lobby, cots for displaced residents, volunteers distributing water and sandwiches, Red Cross workers coordinating. Very heroic, very noble, very stupid. Victoria found the manager on duty and introduced herself with the confidence of someone who owned the truth. "I'm here to pick up my stepdaughter, Brianna Taylor," Victoria said. "She's been staying here. I need to see her immediately." The manager, a young man, early 20s, clearly overwhelmed, hesitated. "I'm not sure. I can check with Mr. Harris's office." "There's nothing to check." Victoria pulled out her phone and showed him documents she'd had her lawyer prepare. Custody papers, guardianship forms, all legally valid because Victoria was Brianna's legal guardian, regardless of how those papers had come about. "Oh, yes, of course." The manager looked uncomfortable. "Let me call Patricia Lopez. She's coordinating things." Patricia arrived 5 minutes later, looking exactly like what she was, a brilliant executive who could navigate any situation. She studied Victoria with the cool assessment of someone who'd learned to spot lies. "Victoria," Patricia said, tone neutral, "I wasn't expecting you. I'm here for my stepdaughter." "Where is she?" "Brianna is safe. She's a minor. She's my legal responsibility." Victoria pulled out the documents again. "I have documentation, guardianship papers, a custody order. I'm taking her home." Patricia took the papers and examined them carefully. "These look legitimate." "They are legitimate. And I'm sure you're aware that keeping a minor away from her legal guardian is kidnapping." The word hung in the air between them. Kidnapping. Victoria had weaponized it deliberately. "I'm going to need to speak with Brianna," Patricia said calmly. "Regardless of what papers say, she has agency in this situation. She's confused, traumatized, easily manipulated. Mr. Harris is taking advantage of a vulnerable minor." Patricia's expression shifted. "Is that what you're claiming?" "I'm not claiming anything. I'm stating facts. Brianna ran away from home. She's been living on the streets. She's clearly in a disturbed mental state. And now a wealthy man is offering her money and housing." Victoria let concern drip into her voice. "Do you really think that's appropriate?" Patricia was quiet for a long moment. Then she picked up her phone and made a call. "Daniel, it's Patricia. We have a situation." Daniel arrived at the hotel 20 minutes later, and Brianna was with him. She walked in behind him, and when she saw Victoria, her entire body went rigid. Her face drained of color. Her hands clenched into fists. "You," Brianna said. "Hello, Brianna." Victoria smiled. Warm, concerned, the picture of maternal affection. "I'm so relieved you're safe. We need to talk. I'm not going anywhere with you." "You don't have a choice, unfortunately." Victoria stepped forward. "You're a minor. I'm your legal guardian. These documents confirm it." Patricia handed the papers to Daniel, who studied them with growing anger. "These are legitimate. Legally valid," Patricia confirmed. "But Daniel, there's something." "She forged them," Brianna said flatly. Victoria laughed. Actually laughed. "Darling, that's a serious accusation. Do you have any proof? Or are you just making wild claims again? Like you did about your father's missing savings? Like you did about me stealing from you?" "I didn't make anything up. You ran away, Brianna. You've been living on the streets for months, which suggests you're unstable, possibly dealing with mental health issues. And now you're making accusations against the one person who's been trying to help you." Victoria turned to Daniel. "I'm sorry you've gotten caught up in this. Brianna is troubled. She tells lies for attention. She's prone to violent outbursts. 3 months ago, she assaulted me and then ran away when I tried to get her professional help." "That's a lie," Brianna said, voice shaking with rage. "Is it?" Victoria pulled out her phone and showed a video. Brianna, 2.5 months earlier, her hand raised against Victoria. Brianna's face showed anger. Victoria flinched away, then grabbed her own arm. "She hit me," Victoria said to Daniel. "I have bruises, medical records, everything." What the video didn't show was that Victoria had forced Brianna's hand up. That Victoria had grabbed Brianna's arm so hard it left marks that the doctor said looked like abuse. That Victoria had twisted Brianna's wrist until she cried out. The video only showed a moment. A single moment taken out of context. "That's not what happened," Brianna said, but her voice was shaking. "That's what the video shows," Victoria said calmly. "And unfortunately for you, My narrative is supported by documentation. Your fathers will leaving everything to me. Medical records of your behavioral issues. Police reports of your violent episodes. School records showing declining grades and disciplinary problems. Daniel was looking at Brianna, and Brianna could see doubt flickering across his face. She made those up, Brianna said desperately. The school records, the police reports, she forged them. Or twisted things. She's been planning this the whole time. She stole my father's inheritance, kicked me out, and now she's... That's enough, Victoria said sharply. You're becoming hysterical. Which just proves my point. She turned to Daniel. I'll take her now. I appreciate your concern, but Brianna needs professional help, not a job and an apartment. No. Daniel's voice was quiet but absolute. You're not taking her. Victoria's expression hardened. Excuse me. You heard me. Brianna is not going anywhere with you. She's a minor under my guardianship. I have legal documentation. I have 60 lawyers on retainer, Daniel said coldly. And every single one of them is going to examine those documents, your finances, and your entire history with Brianna. And if I find out you've forged anything, if I find out you've stolen from her, if I find out you've done anything illegal, and I will find out, then you're going to wish you'd just let her go. Victoria's face flushed with anger. You're making a mistake, Mr. Harris. When my lawyers are done with you. Your lawyers? Daniel stepped forward. You think you can outlawyer me? I've bought and sold companies that cost more than you've made in your entire life. I have connections you can't imagine. And right now, I'm going to dedicate every resource I have to destroying you. You can't keep a minor away from her guardian. Watch me. Daniel pulled out his phone. Patricia, call family services. Tell them we have a potential case of guardianship abuse. Tell them I want Brianna placed in protective custody, pending an investigation. Your lawyers? Daniel stepped forward. You think you can outlawyer me? I've bought and sold companies that cost more than you've made in your entire life. I have connections you can't imagine. And right now, I'm going to dedicate every resource I have to destroying you. You can't keep a minor away from her guardian. Watch me. Daniel pulled out his phone. Patricia, call family services. Tell them we have a potential case of guardianship abuse. Tell them I want Brianna placed in protective custody, pending an investigation. Victoria's face went white. You're bluffing, she said, but her voice wavered. Try me. Daniel's expression was stone. You have until tomorrow to produce documentation showing that every penny of Marcus Taylor's estate was properly accounted for. His life insurance, his savings, his house. Everything. And it better add up, Victoria. Because if it doesn't, you're going to prison. I'm his widow. Everything went to me legally. Maybe, but I want to see exactly what you did with it. And if Brianna's right about any of this, if you forged a will, if you stole from her, if you manipulated a dying man, Daniel's voice was quiet and deadly. Then you're going to pay for it. Victoria stared at him, and Brianna saw the moment her stepmother calculated odds. Saw her realize that she'd made a critical error. That Daniel Harris was not a man to be manipulated or threatened. I want her back, Victoria said quietly. By the end of the week. Or my lawyers will file a motion to have you arrested for parental kidnapping. Then I guess we'll see you in court. Victoria turned and walked out, her heels clicking against the marble floor. The impact of her departure hung in the air like smoke. Brianna realized she was shaking, not from fear, but from rage. Years of rage. Years of being told she was ungrateful, unreasonable, lying, crazy. And finally, someone had believed her. Daniel looked at her. Are you okay? Brianna shook her head. She wasn't okay. She was furious and terrified and grief-stricken all at once. She was thinking about her father, about how Victoria had gotten away with everything for 2 years, about how her father had probably known, on some level, that he'd married the wrong person, about how he died before he could fix it. We're going to need to move quickly, Patricia said, all business. I've already started digging into her finances. My preliminary findings suggest she spent significantly more than Marcus's estate would account for. Either she had money before the marriage, or she's hiding assets. Find it, Daniel said, and find everything else. School records, police reports, medical documents. I want to know if Victoria forged them. On it. Patricia was already on her phone, calling people, issuing orders. Daniel guided Brianna to a quiet corner of the lobby, away from the volunteers and the displaced residents and the news cameras that were starting to show up outside. That was a lot, he said quietly. She's lying, Brianna said. Her voice was hollow. Everything she said, the police reports, the medical records, the video. She's lying, or she's twisted the truth so much it looks like a lie. I believe you. How? You watched that video. You saw me with my hand raised against her. I also saw someone who kept her composure when she could have screamed. Who didn't curse at Victoria or call her names? Who didn't break down? Daniel's eyes were steady. I saw someone telling the truth. Victoria saw the same video and immediately tried to control the narrative. That's what liars do. But what if your lawyers don't believe me? What if the courts side with her? Then we'll appeal. We'll fight. We'll keep fighting until someone listens. Daniel took her hand. Brianna, I made a promise. To help you get back what's yours. Victoria was hoping I'd back down when confronted. But I'm not backing down. Brianna felt tears spill down her face. She couldn't help it. She was 17 years old and had been invisible for so long that being believed felt like a luxury she didn't deserve. Why? She asked. Why are you doing this? You don't owe me anything. Daniel was quiet for a moment. Because when you pulled me out of that ocean, I realized something. The world is full of people drowning. Literally, metaphorically, spiritually. And most of us just watch. We call 911 and wait for someone else to handle it. But you didn't. You got in the water. You risked your life for a stranger. He squeezed her hand gently. So now I'm getting in the water for you. That's not charity, Brianna. That's me being the person I should have been all along. Patricia's investigation moved fast. By evening, she had preliminary findings. Victoria had indeed spent far more than Marcus's estate could account for. She'd purchased the Range Rover shortly after his death, $60,000. She'd redecorated the house, another $70,000. She'd taken expensive vacations, bought designer clothes, invested in stocks. But the estate only had $400,000 in liquid assets. Where did the rest come from? Daniel asked, reviewing the documents Patricia had pulled together. That's the question, Patricia said. Either she had significant personal wealth before the marriage, or she's hidden assets somewhere. Or she's guilty of more than theft, Daniel finished. Run a full forensic audit. Check everything. And pull Marcus's medical records. You think Victoria? I don't know what I think yet. But Brianna's intuition about her stepmother has been right so far. And something Victoria said bothered me. About Marcus dying with undiagnosed health issues. About his doctor being surprised. Patricia nodded slowly. You think Victoria poisoned him? I think it's worth investigating. Pull the autopsy report. Have a toxicologist review it. Look for anything unusual. What they found was disturbing. Marcus Taylor's autopsy had listed the cause of death as an acute myocardial infarction, heart attack, due to an undiagnosed cardiac condition. But the toxicology report had been incomplete. They'd tested for common drugs and alcohol, found nothing. But they hadn't tested for less common substances. Substances like certain medications that, in high doses, could mimic a heart attack in someone with no previous cardiac history. This isn't proof, Patricia said, studying the report. But it's suspicious. Very suspicious. Get the body exhumed, Daniel said quietly. Run a full tox screen. Test for everything. And get a second opinion from an independent medical examiner. It would take time. It would cost money. It would potentially expose Brianna to the trauma of her father being exhumed. But it might finally give her the truth. Daniel told Brianna about the investigation over dinner that night. They were at a restaurant that had generator power, the two of them sitting at a corner table away from other diners. Around them, Miami was slowly returning to normal. The news covered the hurricane damage, manageable, ultimately, though several $billion in total destruction. Some deaths, but far fewer than anyone had feared. They think Victoria might have killed him, Brianna said flatly. Not a question. I think it's a possibility worth investigating. That doesn't make sense. She got his money either way. She didn't need to kill him. No, Daniel agreed. But she might have been impatient. Or she might have been afraid he was going to change his will and leave everything to you. She might have been worried he was going to come to his senses about the marriage. Brianna stared at her food, unable to eat. So while I was thinking he had a heart attack, while I was blaming myself for not recognizing the warning signs, for not being there, you weren't responsible, Brianna. Whatever happened, it wasn't your fault. But if she killed him, Brianna's voice broke. That means she didn't just steal from me. She took him away. She took away the one person who loved me. Daniel reached across the table and took her hand. The investigation might not find anything. The toxicology report might be inconclusive. The body might not tell us what happened. But either way, we're going to find out the truth. And if the truth is that she killed him, then she goes to prison. And you finally get justice. The lifeguard interview happened the next day. Brianna showed up in a borrowed interview outfit. Professional, put together, everything her life as a homeless teenager hadn't been. The Coconut Grove property manager took one look at her certifications and her swimming record and hired her on the spot. $18 an hour, she said. 25 hours a week. You start Monday, after the property fully recovers from the storm. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't a six-figure salary. But it was legal income. It was employment. It was the beginning of building something that was actually hers. That evening, Brianna moved into the corporate apartment permanently. The temporary stay during the hurricane had become something more solid. Something like home. She stood at the window of the 14th floor apartment, looking out at Miami's recovering skyline. Somewhere down there, Victoria was preparing her defense. Preparing to fight. But Brianna had something Victoria didn't have, truth. And truth, her father had always said, was the strongest current of all. 3 weeks after the hurricane, Marcus Taylor's body was exhumed from Lakeside Cemetery. Brianna didn't attend. Daniel had asked if she wanted to, and she'd said no. Some things were better experienced secondhand. Some griefs were better processed alone. Instead, she was at the Coconut Grove property, in the lifeguard tower overlooking an Olympic-sized pool. She'd been working the job for 2 weeks, and it felt good. Real. She was responsible for the safety of 50 swimmers at any given moment. She was trusted. She was visible. Her phone buzzed. A text from Patricia. Medical examiner found something. Call me. Brianna climbed down from the tower and found a private corner by the pool offices. What did they find? She asked without preamble. Digitalis, Patricia said. A cardiac glycoside derived from foxglove plants. Used in heart medications in small doses. But in the quantities they found in your father's system, it would cause a myocardial infarction, a heart attack, in someone without cardiac tolerance. Brianna felt the world tilt. He was poisoned, Patricia continued. The original toxicology report didn't test for it because it's not a common drug of abuse. But the medical examiner did a comprehensive retest, and it's there. Definitely there. Victoria killed him. Brianna's voice was hollow. The medical evidence suggests foul play. But proving that Victoria administered it is another matter. We need to establish motive, opportunity, and access to the substance. She had all three. She was his wife. She was with him constantly. And she needed his money. The question is, can we prove it in court? Patricia was quiet for a moment. Daniel is meeting with the state attorney general right now. They're deciding whether to open a criminal investigation into Marcus's death. If they do, Victoria could face murder charges. And if they don't, then we pursue the civil case, the estate challenge. Either way, we're going to make sure she pays. Victoria Taylor was arrested on a Tuesday morning. The news hit like a hurricane. Breaking news alerts, helicopter footage of police cars surrounding her Coral Gables home, reporters shouting questions as Victoria was let out in handcuffs. Stepmom arrested for murder in swimming coach case. Billionaire's charity case becomes central witness in 2-year-old death. Forged will, poisoning charges rock Miami elite. The media coverage was relentless. Everyone had an opinion. Some sympathized with Victoria, a woman wronged, they claimed, by a troublemaking stepdaughter and a manipulative billionaire. Others pilloried her as a gold-digging murderer. The narrative shifted daily based on whatever new evidence leaked to the press. But through it all, one thing was clear. Brianna's story was being believed. The school records that Victoria had claimed were real? Forged. The police reports of violent episodes? Fabricated. The medical documentation of behavioral issues? Fabrications, all of it. What was real was an autopsy showing toxic levels of digitalis. Real was a financial trail showing Victoria had access to the substance through a pharmacy. Real was text messages between Victoria and her lawyer, discussing taking care of the situation before he changes the will. Real was a woman who'd calculated that it was easier to murder her husband than to wait for a divorce. Daniel called Brianna at work, told her to take the rest of the day off. You should go home, he said. This is going to be intense for a while. Home. He'd called the apartment home. That night, Brianna sat in the 14th floor apartment with Daniel and Patricia, watching the news coverage. Victoria's lawyer was claiming her client was innocent, that the text messages were being taken out of context, that the digitalis could have come from anywhere. She's going to fight this hard, Patricia said. She knows what she's facing. If convicted, she'll spend the rest of her life in prison. Can they prove she did it? Brianna asked. The medical evidence is strong. The financial motive is clear. The access to the poison is documented. But there's no eyewitness account. No video of her administering the digitalis. Circumstantial is powerful, but not always convicting. So she might get away with it. She might, Patricia admitted. But even if she does, the civil case is solid. We can challenge the estate distribution based on fraud. The forged will. The theft. Even without a murder conviction, we can prove she stole from you and used fraudulent documents to do it. Daniel sat beside Brianna. Either way, she's going to lose everything. The house, the money, her freedom. One way or another, she pays. The trial lasted 6 weeks. Brianna sat in the courtroom every single day, wearing the same modest outfit. Professional but not too formal, approachable but serious. Her lawyers had coached her extensively. Don't cry in the witness box. Don't show anger. Let the evidence speak for itself. The prosecution's case was methodical and devastating. The medical examiner testified about the digitalis levels in Marcus's system. The toxicologist confirmed that the quantities were consistent with intentional poisoning, not accidental exposure. The pharmacy records showed Victoria had purchased digitalis-based medication 3 weeks before Marcus's death. The financial records showed motive. Victoria had been hemorrhaging money despite her husband's substantial estate, and she'd known that Marcus was planning to create a trust for Brianna instead of leaving everything to his wife. The text messages were read aloud in court. Victoria asking her lawyer if Marcus would listen to reason about the will. Her lawyer responding that they should move quickly if there are going to be changes. Victoria, 2 days before Marcus's death. The situation needs to be resolved soon. Resolved. What a word choice for murder. When Victoria's lawyer cross-examined the medical examiner, he attacked the timeline. The digitalis could have been administered before the purchase date. It could have accumulated in Marcus's system over time. It could, theoretically, have been accidental. It could, theoretically, be anything but what it appeared to be. Then Brianna was called to testify. She walked into the courtroom, sat in the witness box, and made eye contact with Victoria across the room. Her stepmother sat next to her lawyer, wearing a demure gray dress, looking every bit the grieving widow she'd successfully pretended to be for 2 years. The prosecution's questions were gentle. They let Brianna tell her story, about her father's death, about Victoria's cruelty, about being kicked out, about spending 3 months on the streets because her stepmother had stolen everything. Did your father ever mention changing his will? The prosecutor asked. Yes. He wanted to set up a trust for me. For college. For my future. He asked Victoria if she minded, and she said no. But he said he wanted to make sure it was done properly. Did he ever seem afraid of Victoria? Brianna paused. That was the question, wasn't it? Had her father known? Had he sensed danger? Not afraid. Exactly, Brianna said carefully. But cautious. He asked me once if I thought Victoria had married him for love or for money. I didn't know how to answer that. The prosecutor let that hang in the air. Then Victoria's lawyer stood for cross-examination. Brianna, isn't it true that you have a history of lying for attention? The lawyer asked, throwing Victoria's false narrative right back at her. No, that's not true. You told Mr. Harris that your stepmother forged documents. Do you have proof of that? The documents were forged. The schools confirmed that the incident reports never existed. The police confirmed they have no record of the reports Victoria claimed were filed. But you have no direct knowledge of Victoria creating these forged documents, correct? No, and you've been homeless for 3 months, which suggests you have poor judgment about your own safety and well-being, correct? I was homeless because Victoria stole from me, or because you ran away, as your stepmother claims. Isn't it possible that you've created this narrative about Victoria being a murderer to explain away your own life failures? Brianna felt anger spike through her, but she controlled it. This was what Daniel had warned her about. The lawyer would try to make her look unstable, unreliable, motivated by vengeance, rather than truth. No, Brianna said quietly. I didn't create the autopsy results. I didn't create the pharmacy records. I didn't create the text messages. Those are all real evidence. My testimony is just context. Context that conveniently makes you a victim who deserves sympathy and financial compensation. I didn't ask for this. I just want my father's medals back. The courtroom went very quiet. Daniel watched from the gallery, and Brianna could see him understanding exactly what she'd done. She'd humanized herself. She wasn't asking for money or vengeance. She was asking for a tangible reminder of her father, something of actual value. The jury ate it up. The jury deliberated for 3 days. On the afternoon of the third day, they came back with a verdict. Guilty on all counts. First-degree murder, fraud, forgery, theft. Victoria flinched like she'd been hit, but she didn't cry, didn't show emotion. Just sat there while the judge read the sentence. Life without parole for the murder, an additional 40 years for the financial crimes. She'd spend the rest of her life in prison. The courtroom erupted in sound, gasps, quiet sobbing from the gallery, news cameras flashing outside. Brianna sat very still, feeling nothing and everything at once. Her father's killer had been convicted. Justice had been done. And somehow, it didn't make anything better. After the trial, there was the civil case. Much quicker, much cleaner. The judge ruled that Victoria had fraudulently induced Marcus to marry her, had forged his will, and had stolen from both his estate and from Brianna's rightful inheritance. The house was ordered returned to Brianna's estate, though she immediately signed it over to a youth homeless shelter in her father's name. The money was distributed according to Marcus's original intent, with a substantial portion going to Brianna and the rest to various charities and causes Marcus had supported. Brianna's portion came to nearly $200,000. She held the check for a long time, unable to quite comprehend it. $200,000. Money her father had intended for her education. Money that had been stolen. Money that was finally hers. What will you do with it? Daniel asked. They were in the apartment, Brianna staring at the bank deposit confirmation. I don't know, Brianna admitted. College. A car. An apartment of my own. She looked at him. Maybe start my own thing someday. You're going to finish high school first. Enrollment starts in 2 weeks. I'm going to get my GED and then go straight to college. Brianna smiled slightly. I lost 2 years. I'm not losing anymore. Daniel was quiet for a moment. Then he said something Brianna hadn't expected. I called Emily. Brianna looked up. After the trial verdict, I called my daughter. I told her about you. About what you've been through. About how you saved my life and I was helping you pursue justice. Daniel's voice was rough. I apologized to her. Really apologized. For missing her childhood. For prioritizing work over family. For being emotionally absent. What did she say? That she needed to think about it. That one phone call and an apology doesn't erase 5 years of abandonment. Daniel looked at Brianna. But she said maybe we could talk again. After the holidays. See if we can rebuild something. Brianna reached over and squeezed his hand. Thank you, Daniel said. For everything. For saving my life. For teaching me that drowning doesn't have to be your final state. Thank you for believing me, Brianna replied. When Victoria had all those documents in that story, you could have doubted. You could have walked away. But you didn't. I've spent 5 years not showing up for people. I wasn't going to do it again. That night, Brianna went back to the Coconut Grove property and sat in the lifeguard tower, staring out at the pool. Her father had taught her to swim when she was 3 years old. Had spent countless hours in pools just like this one, teaching not just swimming but resilience. The ability to keep your head above water. The knowledge that currents exist but can be navigated. The understanding that panic is the real enemy. She'd put all of that to use. Had navigated the current of homelessness and abuse and injustice. Had kept her head above water long enough for someone to notice she was drowning. And now, at 17, she was building something solid. A job, an apartment, a college fund, and an unlikely family, Daniel and Patricia, who'd become something like the parents she'd lost. Tomorrow, the news would move on to the next scandal, the next trial, the next heartbreak. Victoria Taylor would become a footnote in Miami's crime history. But here, in this moment, with the evening sun painting the pool gold, Brianna allowed herself to feel something like peace. She'd survived. And more than that, she was going to thrive. She pulled out her phone and texted Daniel. I'm ready for the next part. Whatever comes next. His response came immediately. College applications? Life applications. But yeah, college too. Then, your father would be proud. Brianna looked at the pool, at the water that had saved her father's career, that had defined her childhood, that had been her first rescue. "I know," she whispered to the empty air. "I know he would be." The Marcus Taylor Memorial Community Pool opened on a Saturday in June, exactly 1 year after Brianna had saved Daniel Harris's life. The facility was modest but beautiful. Olympic-sized pool, 6 lanes, diving boards, a shallow section for younger children. Behind the pool stood a bronze plaque with Marcus Taylor's name and a single inscription: "He taught us to swim, not just in water, but through life." Brianna stood at the edge of the pool, wearing the navy polo shirt of a certified swim instructor. Around her were 30 kids, ages 5 to 17, many of them from the same homeless shelters where Brianna had spent those 3 months on the streets. "All right, everyone," she called out, her voice carrying the confidence of someone who belonged in that space. "Let's start with the basics. Remember what I taught you last week? In the water, your body wants to float. You just have to let it." The children waded in. Some were terrified. Some couldn't believe they were allowed to be here, in this beautiful pool, with someone who looked like them teaching them something that might change their lives. Brianna had been where they were. She understood the fear, the doubt, the belief that the world wasn't built for kids like them. She also understood how quickly that could change. Daniel watched from the bleachers, along with Patricia and, surprisingly, Emily. Daniel's daughter had come down for a week, and she'd asked to see what her father had been talking about for the past year. What had transformed him from a detached billionaire into someone who actually cared about people? Watching Brianna teach, Emily understood. There was authority in Brianna's movements. She didn't just instruct, she inspired. She got in the water herself, showed the children exactly how to float, exactly how to trust their bodies. She told them stories about her father, about swimming her way through grief, about how water had saved her. "Your turn," Brianna said to a girl who looked about 8, terrified of the deep end. "Come here. I've got you." The girl grabbed Brianna's hand and stepped into the water, and for the first time, she experienced the magic of floating. Her face transformed. Fear became wonder. That was what Brianna lived for now. That moment of transformation. After the pool sessions, Brianna went to the Harris Foundation office, a new nonprofit that Daniel had created with Brianna's input. The Marcus Taylor Youth Foundation, dedicated to helping homeless and at-risk youth access education, athletics, and mentorship. It had a simple mission: make sure no one else had to drown alone. Brianna was the associate director, a position Daniel had created specifically for her. She coordinated swimming programs, helped place youth in scholarships and job training, advocated for policy changes around homeless youth services. She was also simultaneously a full-time community college student, working toward a degree in social work, a part-time lifeguard at 3 Harris Hotel properties, and a volunteer mentor for teens aging out of the foster system. "You're going to burn out," Patricia warned, reviewing Brianna's schedule. "You're taking 18 credits, working 30 hours a week, and coordinating programs. That's unsustainable." "It's manageable," Brianna said. She was 18 now, not 17. Old enough to legally be on her own, though she still lived in the corporate apartment Daniel insisted she keep. "I need to finish my degree. I want to expand the foundation. And I like the lifeguard work. It keeps me in the water. Your father would want you to balance things better." "My father wouldn't want me sitting idle. He'd want me working towards something." Patricia smiled. Brianna was right about that. The foundation had already placed 42 youth in transitional housing, had helped 17 kids re-enroll in school, had taught swimming lessons to over 200 children from backgrounds like Brianna's, and it was growing. Daniel had committed to funding it for 10 years minimum. But the plan was to make it sustainable through donations, grants, and eventually, a permanent endowment funded by Daniel's personal wealth. "He's doing it for you," Patricia said one day, "making sure you have resources to continue the work after he's gone." "He's not going anywhere," Brianna said. "Everyone goes somewhere eventually. But Daniel's thinking about legacy now, about what matters after the money and the hotels are gone." Emily stayed in Miami longer than planned. She'd come for a week. She stayed for 2. Then she called her job in Seattle and asked about a transfer to the Miami office. "I want to be here," she told Brianna one evening. They were sitting on the balcony of Daniel's penthouse, a different one from the South Beach apartment, this one overlooking Biscayne Bay. "I want to know my father, and I want to help with the foundation." "What about your life in Seattle?" "I had a life in Seattle, but I didn't have family." Emily looked out at the water. Dad told me how you saved him, how you literally pulled him from the ocean. And then I watched you teach those kids to swim today, and I realized you're showing me what it means to actually care about people, to show up." Brianna smiled. "He's your father. He cares. He does now, but he didn't before." Emily's voice wasn't bitter, just honest. "For a long time, I thought he didn't have the capacity. I thought he was broken in some fundamental way. But watching him with you, seeing how he's transformed, maybe I was wrong. Maybe he just needed to see what it actually looked like to matter. You matter to him. I'm starting to believe that." Emily accepted the job transfer. She moved to Miami in August and started working at the foundation part-time while keeping her day job. She and Brianna became something like sisters. Not exactly, because their relationship didn't fit traditional categories, but genuine family nonetheless. When Brianna's 18th birthday came around in September, the three of them, Daniel, Emily, and Patricia, threw a party at the pool, hired a caterer, invited the kids from the swim program and staff from the foundation, made it a celebration not just of Brianna's age, but of survival. Daniel gave a speech. "2 years ago, I was drowning," he said to the assembled crowd. "Emotionally, spiritually, professionally, I was going through life without actually living. And then this remarkable young woman pulled me from the ocean and, in doing so, saved me in ways neither of us could have imagined." He looked directly at Brianna. "Brianna has taught me that wealth isn't measured in dollars. That success isn't about the empire you build, but about the lives you touch. That redemption isn't automatic. It requires showing up, day after day, and doing the work." Emily squeezed Brianna's hand. "Today, I'm proud to announce that the Marcus Taylor Youth Foundation has secured permanent funding for the next 30 years. This is Brianna's work. These are her values. And I'm honored to support it." The crowd erupted in applause. Later, Patricia pulled Brianna aside. "That announcement will generate significant media attention. Your story, from homeless to foundation director, is compelling. People will want to interview you, profile you, potentially exploit you for their narratives. What should I do?" "Whatever you want. But be strategic. Use the platform if you want to. Advocate for policy changes. But don't let other people's stories about you become more real than your own story." Brianna nodded. She understood. She'd watched Victoria try to control the narrative about her. She'd learned that whoever tells the story gets to shape reality. She wanted to tell her own story, not as victim or charity case, but as someone who'd been broken by the system and had chosen to rebuild not just herself, but the system itself. 1 year after the trial, Brianna returned to her old neighborhood for the first time. She drove herself, in a used car she'd bought with some of her inheritance, a reliable Honda instead of something flashy. She drove past the homeless shelters, the community centers, the beaches where she'd slept. And she parked near the Gulliver Prep Community Center where her father had coached. The new coach, a woman named Linda who'd been her father's partner for years, was inside. "Brianna." Linda pulled her into a hug. "It's been so long. How are you?" "Good. I'm really good." They sat in the pool area, the same pool where Brianna had been certified as a lifeguard at 15, where her father had taught her to swim before she could walk. "I came to ask something," Brianna said. "The foundation wants to start a program here, at the community center. Free swimming lessons for kids from underfunded neighborhoods. We provide curriculum development, instructor training, scholarships for kids who want to pursue competitive swimming." Linda's face transformed. "Your father would have loved that," she said. "He always said that the water was one of the few places where zip code didn't matter, where a poor kid could be just as fast as a rich kid. He did say that. We'll make it happen. Tell me what you need." As they talked logistics, Brianna felt something settle in her chest. Not grief. She'd made peace with her father's death, with the truth of how he'd died, with the way his life had mattered. But something like completion. A cycle closing. Her father had saved her through swimming. She'd saved a drowning billionaire through swimming. And now she was saving other children through swimming. The water was just water. But water was also history, legacy, survival, and hope. Later that week, Brianna visited the cemetery where her father was buried. She brought her father's medals with her. The ones Victoria had stolen, the ones that had been returned through the estate settlement. Brianna had kept them for a year, unable to decide what to do with them. Now she knew. She knelt at the grave and placed the medals in a small waterproof box she'd brought. Along with the medals, she placed a letter, written by hand, not typed. That explained what had happened. Victoria's arrest. The trial. The foundation. The program starting in his name. Dad, she wrote, I finally got the water back. I'm teaching kids to swim the way you taught me. I'm teaching them that they're worth saving, that they're capable of incredible things, that water isn't something to fear, but something to learn. Thank you for teaching me how to float. Thank you for loving me. Thank you for being someone worth carrying forward. I'm going to do something big with this life you gave me. I promise. She buried the box in the earth beside the grave. On the drive back to Miami, Brianna got a call from the college. Her transfer application to Florida International University had been accepted. Full scholarship, covering tuition and room and board. She could attend starting next fall, pursue a degree in social work with a focus on youth advocacy. She could build the life she'd been dreaming of. Brianna pulled over and called Daniel. I got in, she said when he answered. FIU. Full scholarship. I'm going to do my degree. I'm going to change policy. I'm going to make sure that no other kid has to sleep on the streets because the system failed them. Daniel's voice was thick with emotion. I'm so proud of you. I couldn't have done any of this without you. Without you believing me, supporting me. You did all of this, Brianna. I just helped. You're the one who had the courage to testify. You're the one building the programs. You're the one changing lives. He paused. I'm just grateful to be part of your story. After she hung up, Brianna sat in her car for a long time, staring out at the ocean. She thought about the girl she'd been 2 years ago. Invisible, homeless, desperate, using swimming as her only way to survive. She thought about the moment she'd seen Daniel drowning and had made the split-second decision to save him. She'd thought that moment was about him, but it had really been about her. Saving someone else had shown her that she was worth saving too, that her life mattered, that her choices could ripple outward and change not just her own trajectory, but the trajectories of dozens of other kids. That was the real rescue, not being pulled from water, but learning how to swim toward your own future. Brianna started the car and drove back toward Miami, toward the foundation offices, toward Emily and Daniel and Patricia, toward the next phase of her life. She didn't look back. Brianna Taylor stood at the podium of the Miami Convention Center, looking out at an audience of 3,000 people. She was 21 years old. She wore a navy blazer and white shirt, professional, polished, but authentically her. Her locks were styled in an updo, her makeup minimal. She didn't try to look like anyone but herself. Behind her on the screen was a photograph, a 17-year-old girl, thin and exhausted, pulling a drowning man from the ocean. 3 years ago, Brianna began, her voice steady. I became visible by saving someone else's life. A billionaire, a stranger, someone who should have been the last person on earth who needed my help. But I was in the right place at the right time, and I made a choice to act. She paused, letting that settle. What I didn't know then was that saving him would save me. That one moment of courage would lead to an investigation that exposed fraud, revealed a murder, and gave a family their justice back. That it would spark a foundation that has now helped over 200 at-risk youth find housing, education, and opportunity. The audience was silent, listening. My name is Brianna Taylor. My father was Marcus Taylor, a swimming coach who died under suspicious circumstances 6 years ago. My stepmother murdered him for his inheritance and stole from me. She's now serving a life sentence for those crimes. Brianna clicked to the next slide. Statistics on youth homelessness, on the school-to-prison pipeline, on the systemic failures that had left her invisible for 3 months. But this isn't a story about what was done to me. This is a story about what I'm doing about it. This is a story about the Marcus Taylor Youth Foundation, which has now expanded to 15 locations across Florida. About the swimming programs we've established. About the 43 youth we've placed in college scholarships. About policy changes we've advocated for that have made it easier for homeless teenagers to access public services. She clicked to the next slide, photographs of the kids from the foundation. Kids swimming, kids in classrooms, kids smiling in ways that suggested they'd found hope. Last year, we passed the Taylor Youth Protection Act, which requires states to adequately provide for minor children when suspending guardianship. It's named after my father, and it will prevent other families from being devastated the way mine was. Brianna's voice strengthened. To anyone in this room who has felt invisible, you're not. Your life matters. Your potential matters. And if the system has failed you, we're going to build something better. That's not charity. That's justice. That's saying that zip code shouldn't determine destiny. That trauma shouldn't be a life sentence. That drowning doesn't have to be your final state. After the speech, there was a reception. Brianna found herself surrounded by activists, policymakers, donors, and young people who'd been through the foundation programs. A girl maybe 16 approached her nervously. "I was homeless," the girl said. 2 years ago. I slept on the beach near where you saved that guy. And I saw the news coverage and I thought, if she could do that, maybe I could do something too. I'm in my senior year now. I got a scholarship to Georgia State. I'm going to study criminal justice because of you." Brianna pulled her into a hug. This was why she did it. Not for recognition or awards, but for moments like this. For proof that her story mattered. That it could spark something in someone else. Later, Daniel and Emily found her. Daniel was 54 now, his hair completely silver. He'd stepped back from the day-to-day operations of Harris Hotels, focusing instead on philanthropy. He'd donated over $50 million to various youth-focused organizations, with the majority going to the foundation that bore Marcus Taylor's name. Emily had become the executive director of the foundation. She and Brianna worked together daily, building something that had started as guilt and gratitude and had transformed into genuine mission-driven work. "That was incredible," Emily said, squeezing Brianna's hand. "You're a natural public speaker," Daniel added. "You should think about going into advocacy work. Policy, legislation, you could change things on a larger scale." "Maybe after my master's," Brianna said. She'd graduated from FIU 2 years ago with a degree in social work. She was currently pursuing her master's in public policy with a focus on vulnerable youth services. "Right now, I want to finish school and keep the foundation growing." "The foundation will be here," Daniel said. "You've built something that doesn't depend on you anymore. It has its own momentum. That's the goal, right? To build something that outlives us." Daniel smiled. "Your father did that. He built you. And you've built something so much bigger." That evening, Brianna returned to her apartment. Not the corporate one Daniel had originally provided, but a small one-bedroom she'd rented with her own money. She'd wanted to prove she could live independently. Daniel had understood. She sat at her kitchen table with her laptop open, reading through grant proposals for the foundation. There was always more work to do, more kids to reach, more policies to change. Her phone buzzed. A text from Patricia. "Saw your speech. Standing ovation. Marcus would be proud." Then one from a number she didn't recognize. "Hi Brianna, I'm a writer. I'd like to tell your story. The world needs to hear it. Can we talk?" Brianna deleted that one. She'd learned to be careful about who got to tell her story. She'd accepted one documentary crew to film the foundation's programs, but she was protective of the narrative. The world had enough stories about victims. She wanted to tell stories about survivors, about builders, about people who took their pain and transformed it into purpose. She thought about the girl at the reception, about the 43 youth in college because of the foundation, about the 16 locations where kids were learning to swim, learning that they were worth saving. She thought about her father, whose legacy had transformed from theft and erasure to a body of work that was helping thousands. She thought about Daniel, who'd gone from being a successful but empty billionaire to someone genuinely investing in human beings. And she thought about herself, the girl who'd been invisible 3 years ago, who'd become visible by saving someone else, who'd learned that sometimes the greatest rescue is the one you provide for yourself. The next morning, Brianna returned to the Marcus Taylor Memorial Pool. It was Saturday, and the children's swim program was in full swing. She stood at the edge of the water, watching a 7-year-old girl, Michelle, from a family experiencing homelessness, finally master her floating technique. The girl's face transformed with joy. "I'm doing it," Michelle squealed. "I'm floating." "You absolutely are," Brianna said, moving to support her. "And do you know what floating is?" "What?" "Floating is trusting that the water will hold you. That even when things are hard, you can relax and let something bigger support you." Michelle nodded seriously, absorbing this lesson that was about so much more than swimming. Brianna looked up at the bronze plaque behind the pool. "He taught us to swim, not just in water, but through life." Her father had taught her that. Daniel had learned that. And now, hundreds of children were learning it too. That survival wasn't about fighting constantly, but about knowing when to float. About accepting help. About trusting that the current could carry you somewhere better if you didn't exhaust yourself fighting it. That was Marcus Taylor's real legacy. Not the medals that had been stolen, but the lessons that kept multiplying spreading outward like ripples in water. Brianna dove back into the pool, swimming alongside the children, teaching them not just to survive, but to thrive. And somewhere, she imagined her father was proud. Not because she'd avenged him, though she had. Not because she'd reclaimed what was stolen, though she had. But because she'd taken the worst moment of her life and transformed it into a movement. She'd taken drowning and made it into a teaching moment. She'd taken invisibility and turned it into a voice that was heard by thousands. Some rescues save one person, but the best rescues save everyone who comes after. Thank you for watching to the end. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on your notifications for new videos.